We finally have results in several San Diego County elections weeks after voters went to the polls.
Because many of our children are children of color. We're all very diverse. And for them to feel unwelcome in their own country, it's unacceptable.
Officials at a San Diego museum dedicated to immigrants respond to anti-immigrant graffiti left on their walls over the weekend. And virtual reality goes underwater for a game called Shark Punch, how it could help people with a serious illness. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. I'm Amitha Sharma. For the first time in 3 decades, a San Diego County supervisor has lost his seat to a challenger. Kristin Gasper has defeated Dave Roberts in a come-from-behind win in the 3rd District. KPBS North County reporter Allison St. John joins us from the newsroom with more.
Incumbent Dave Roberts was winning on election night, but now, after 3 weeks of counting mail-in and provisional ballots, Gasper has taken the seat. With 226,000 ballots counted, Gasper wins by 1,242 votes. That's about 0.5%. Gasper, a Republican, is currently the mayor of Encinitas and has held elected office in Encinitas for 6 years. In a statement, she thanked her supporters, saying she ran on a platform of fiscal accountability and support for public safety, as well as dealing with mental health programs and the homeless crisis. She promised to make changes to benefit taxpayers. Now, Dave Roberts, who was the only Democrat on the board, has only served 1 term. Several disgruntled staffers left his office last year, and the county paid more than $300,000 to settle their lawsuits against him. He faced a barrage of negative campaign mailers and TV ads funded with hundreds of thousands of dollars from Republican-backed independent political action committees. They accused him of betraying the public trust. Roberts' defeat is noteworthy in view of the longevity of the other county supervisors. As this graph shows, all the other members, Diane Jacob, Greg Cox, Ron Roberts, and Bill Horn, were elected in the 1990s, and they've held their seats for decades. Till Roberts was elected, all were Republicans. With Gasper's victory, all 5 members will once again be Republicans. The future promises more turnover because San Diegans have voted for term limits at the county, and within the next 4 years, all the current incumbents except for Gasper will be termed out. Allison St. John, KPBS News.
California Congressman Darrell Issa is keeping his House seat. The Associated Press has called the race between Issa and Democratic challenger Doug Applegate. The 8-term Republican survived the surprisingly close contest, with political newcomer Applegate finishing about 2,300 votes ahead. Issa can thank Orange County voters for his win. He finished up about 16,000 there. In San Diego, he lost by about 14,000. The future of California's death penalty was officially announced today. Californians narrowly approved Proposition 66. The measure will reform the death penalty process by speeding up appeals. And it was a narrow loss for Proposition 53, the so-called No Blank Checks initiative. This one would have required voter approval for revenue bonds of more than $2 billion. Governor Jerry Brown opposed Prop 53. It could have forced a new vote on the state's high-speed rail project. California lawmakers and election officials are railing against claims from Donald Trump that there is serious voter fraud in the state. The president-elect made his unsubstantiated claims Sunday via Twitter, tweeting that there were also problems in Virginia and New Hampshire. California officials say the state's election has many safeguards in place, and even though people in the country illegally can obtain driver's licenses, they can't use them to register to vote.
But those driver's licenses and their numbers are sequestered within the DMV's database. So if you used one of those numbers to register to vote online, for example, it would not get processed.
Election officials also argue California does not have a history of voter fraud. The final tally from all of California's 58 counties has yet to be finalized. However, Hillary Clinton leads Trump by nearly 4 million votes. Rallies following the police shooting of an unarmed black man in El Cajon brought racial tensions to the surface that had been long simmering in the once predominantly white city, and they're a sign of political change, but one community leaders say was already underway. KPBS reporter Claire Tregeser has the story.
There's no better chance than now, no better time than now to start uniting.
Marquise Parks is speaking at a rally, one of many organized since an El Cajon police officer killed Alfred Alongo.
When will we demand our God-given rights?
Rights like equal representation.
Put down the bullets! Put down the bullets!
The shooting mobilized Parks and other activists who want a more diverse government.
It's like I feel as a person who is in the community and of the community that it's my duty to want to have this place that I live in to be better and better be served by the people that we have or entrust.
Parks worked to pass Measure S to create city council districts. Right now, council members are elected citywide. That gives high turnout majority white neighborhoods more power. Parks hopes the new districts will boost the council's diversity.
El Cajon has a very, not so good history of division amongst his citizens due to, the color of one's skin.
So this is an actual 1920 Steinway.
Corey Blaker has watched that history unfold over 20 years as a teacher at El Cajon Valley High School. According to census data, when he first took the job, the city was about 75% white. Now it's just over 50%.
If you look at our school yearbooks, probably around 2004, 2005, we have more and more Arabic names. You have a lot more Alis, we have more Miriams, we have more Mohammeds.
Almost 15,000 Iraqi refugees have moved to San Diego County, many to El Cajon, in the last 7 years.
When I first moved here, there was one Arabic restaurant.
Now downtown is covered with store signs in Arabic. Blaker says he likes the change because these businesses fill vacant buildings.
It doesn't matter where you come from. You want your kids to have a better life than you did, and you want your kids to be successful. And having grocery stores in El Cajon, where the owners are Arabic, that screams success.
Under Measure S, a mostly Iraqi neighborhood could elect a representative who's more reflective of its growing diversity. But it could take longer to bring policy change.
I live in Fletcher Hills. I don't want a liquor store on every corner. I don't want a hookah lounge on every corner.
Ben Kalasho is an Iraqi immigrant just elected to El Cajon City Council. You might think that shows the council is diversifying without smaller districts. But he specifically says he's not there to just represent the Iraqi community's needs.
Congratulations.
He lives in a mostly white neighborhood.
I always like to stress that I'm American first, I'm El Cajonian, and then further down the line, 7th or 8th down the line, I could say that I'm Middle Eastern. But I would never vote for a Middle Eastern person just because they're Middle Eastern.
Kalasho wants to ban refugees from coming to El Cajon and will ask Arabic businesses to change their signs to English.
How are you, man? Good to see you.
He worries that under Measure S, an Iraqi council member would only think about his district, not the city as a whole.
People are infallible, and they're gonna make those judgment calls based on the district because they want to keep their seat.
Say his name!
The activist Park says that's exactly the point.
A lot of the city council members live in the same neighborhood, so it would just give somebody a more direct person to get in contact with about their concerns for the community.
He's making his own proposal for district boundaries and might run for council in the future.
Not to shoot, to kill.
His election would mark a big change for El Cajon, change that may have been simmering already, but was sparked into a fast burn by Alongo's death.
And brought a sense of urgency to the matter. We know nothing's going to happen quickly, but things happen when you have the numbers.
The council must have district boundaries before the next election in 2018. Claire Tregeser, KPBS News.
Law enforcement officials and Muslim community leaders in Los Angeles condemned a series of letters sent to Southern California mosques today. The letters were sent to Islamic centers in Long Beach, San Jose, and Claremont in San Bernardino. The handwritten letters praised President-elect Donald Trump and threatened Muslim genocide. The FBI is encouraging anyone who receives a threatening letter to report it. Anti-immigrant messages were left at a San Diego museum over the weekend. Officials at the New Americans Museum say those messages are a hate crime. KPBS reporter Steve Walsh has the story.
Patrons found the messages Saturday morning on both walls of the entrance to the museum at Liberty Station. A crowd gathered by the time someone came to get Executive Director Linda Sotelo.
I mean, when you have young children coming through these exhibitions, children who are diverse, we have over 6 schools here at Liberty Station. They come through and they see something like that. You know, it's irresponsible for us not to talk to them and engage them, because many of our children are children of color. We're all very diverse, and for them to feel unwelcome in their own country, it's unacceptable.
They took pictures for police. Salido said a well-meaning custodian cleaned the posters, which advertised an art exhibit on Mexican immigration. The Southern Poverty Law Center reports more than 700 instances of hateful harassment nationwide since the election.
I've noticed a change in the tone in some of the visitors, not all, but some, being much more confrontive about how they question the topics in our exhibitions.
Despite the vandalism, the museum intends to be a place where people can discuss even controversial views of immigration. They are retraining staff to manage any confrontation. Steve Walsh, KPBS News.
A church in Silicon Valley is looking to combat racism in a unique way and using a familiar structure to do it. This story comes to us from KQED in San Francisco.
I'm Khalid and I'm a racist.
I'm May. I am a racist.
I'm Darrell and I'm a racist.
I'm Ron and I'm a racist.
I'm Morgan and I'm a racist.
Many times when something goes on the news, people in the family will say things like, I sure hope one of us did that.
We needed a different way to come at this topic, where people aren't blaming other people for what's happened and something more constructive. And I thought the 12-step program might be a valid approach. Any external difference is a way that we classify and divide ourselves. It's something we'd like to get beyond. I would. Yes. So much of the racism we're experiencing in our country right now is the result, I believe, of people being hurt. Let's just name it. White men in this country feeling like they've been left behind.
And suddenly you discover that the number of people who have felt evil sisters of racism, in fact, covers almost all of us. But I think by looking through 24 eyes instead of just 2, we can more completely begin to see the problems that you have correctly pointed out.
There was this African American woman who was totally distraught, and she just wanted a ride from the hospital to some place where she could take a bus or a train. I didn't even hear what she had to say. I was so, it was such a unknown situation for me, you know. And I got into the car and I just left. That experience has stayed with me, that I really don't know myself that well. You know, I may think I'm liberal, I may think I'm not a racist, and you know, all races are fine, but you know, when it comes to, when the rubber meets the road, it's a whole different person who shows up.
Let the understanding, love, and peace found in the program grow in you one day at a time. Please stand, take hands, and join as we pray the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name.
I'm hoping that if we can get beyond the racism piece and work through it, not pretend it isn't there, but own it, acknowledge our own, and work through it, that both white men and black men and red, yellow, and if there's a purple man, that we can all confront our own racism and all our hurt from racism, which is significant.
Keep coming back. It works.
All right, come on, let's go. Goodbye.
A cousin to the word racism is this year's word of the year. Xenophobia topped the annual list by Oakland-based dictionary.com. The 21-year-old site defines xenophobia as fear or hatred of foreigners, people from different cultures, or strangers. A lexicographer for Dictionary.com says the Brexit vote and police violence against people of color produced spikes in the number of times people looked the word up. A potentially crippling strike by thousands of union nurses against Sharp Healthcare has been called off. KPBS health reporter Kenny Goldberg says the two sides have reached a tentative agreement on one of their most contentious issues.
The nurses' union had been vying for a closed shop. Sharp Healthcare wanted nurses to have the option of whether to join the union. Under the tentative deal, nurses who are currently at Sharp will retain that option. Newly hired nurses must be dues-paying members within 30 days. They'll have a 5-day window to opt out of the union after 90 days. Sharp Executive Vice President Dan Gross admits there are still some other issues to work out.
But I think both parties are really at a point where let's move forward, let's work hard, let's come to an agreement, and we will continue to stay with it as long as necessary.
Union members say they're anxious to hammer out higher wages that will help Sharp cut down on nursing turnover. Kenny Goldberg, KPBS News.
Psychiatric hospitals use seclusion and restraint as a last resort when they can't otherwise calm patients who are a danger to themselves or others. Now, a federal website is tracking how common those practices are. Cheryl Clark with KPBS partner iNewsSource has more.
These are patients with severe flare-ups of illnesses like schizophrenia, who often can be managed with medication or other methods to calm them down. But some hospitals still rely on seclusion and restraint, prompting Medicare officials to publish how often they're used and where. LA County USC Hospital had the highest use in California, 9 hours per 1,000 hours of patient care for restraints and nearly 7 hours for seclusion. But many hospitals, including here in San Diego County, use those methods rarely or not at all. LAC's medical officer, Dr. Brad Spellberg, explained that his large psych unit has received more violent patients since the start of the state's prison system's early release program. When the facility tried to reduce restraints, assaults increased dramatically. I'm Cheryl Clark with KPBS partner iNewsSource.
Officially, it's a few weeks off, but as far as local ski resorts are concerned, winter is here. Mountain High and Big Bear got a few inches of snow over the weekend. Mountain High is planning on opening tomorrow. Big Bear opened on Friday. Here in San Diego, we're looking at overnight temperatures near freezing. Regina Miller has the forecast.
Well, as we take a look at your weather right around Southern California, it's pretty quiet. We've had just some passing clouds here around Los Angeles, San Diego, seeing some clouds passing through, but you can see not much activity here across the southern part of the area. So as we look ahead to the metro for the overnight hours, we'll see a temperature of 51 degrees, a partly cloudy sky. In San Diego County, we'll have a temperature of 35 in Ramona, Borrego Springs at 41 degrees, Mount Laguna at 31, and right in San Diego we'll be at 51 degrees. It is going to be milder as we go into your Tuesday. We have some high pressure offshore. There's a cold pocket of air and as you go into the Four Corners area, but back into this area, we're in the ridging side, and that means it is going to be milder. We have some sunshine in the forecast as well. So taking a look at the coast here, we'll see a temperature of 70 degrees with plenty of sunshine for your Tuesday. Overnight lows dropping into the mid-30s for Wednesday. Plenty of sunshine at 69, 68 on Thursday and Friday. Mostly sunny on Thursday, and then we still keep plenty of sunshine as we go into the weekend. For Tuesday in the inland areas, we have a temperature of 72 degrees with plenty of sun, upper 30s for your overnight lows. On Wednesday, sunshine and nice, 74 degrees. We'll drop back to 71 for Thursday and 75 by the time we get to Saturday with plenty of sunshine. The mountain areas will be at 45 degrees for Tuesday, so sunny and chilly. Sunny but still chilly on Wednesday, and we don't get out of the upper 40s for Thursday either, but by Friday we fall back into the 30s, so a chilly day and breezy. As we head into the desert locations, sunny and breezy with a temperature of 68 degrees. Cool on Wednesday with some sunshine. We stay at 68 for Thursday. We'll fall back to 64 by Friday, and on Saturday we're back to 70 degrees with mostly sunny skies. So a pretty good looking forecast there as we start the weekend. I'm Regina Miller, KPBS News.
It can go more than 200 miles on battery power, and it costs less than the average new vehicle in the U.S. The Chevrolet Bolt is set to go on sale soon, but Associated Press reporter Mike Householder says it remains to be seen how the car will fare in an era of cheap gas.
General Motors has been making cars for a century, but it's never made one quite like this. The all-electric Chevrolet Bolt, which can go 238 miles on a single charge, is about to go on sale.
The vehicle has been designed for, to make it affordable for the masses.
But with gas around $2 a gallon, will the masses want it? Bob Ortlieb considered the Bolt.
We liked the size of the car. It looked nice.
But in the end, the hospital employee went a different route because he didn't want to pay for the charger needed to power up the Bolt at his suburban Detroit home.
To me and to my wife, that was kind of a deal breaker, because of the expense of getting one of those.
The Bolt is the most affordable long-range electric vehicle for now. Tesla, whose Model S can go 210 miles per charge, costs almost twice as much. But the company is expected to come out next year with the Model 3, which can go 200 miles and cost $35,000 before tax credits, compared with the Bolt's $37,000 pre-tax credits price. Tesla already has hundreds of thousands of deposits on the Model 3.
When you look at Chevy, they're only planning 30 to 50,000 production vehicles of the Bolt, as opposed to Tesla, who's trying to ramp this into a $500,000 million cars a year type proposal.
GM didn't take advance orders on the Bolt, which is about to go on sale in California and Oregon, and will spread to the rest of the country next year, hoping to spark the shift from gas to electric. Mike Householder, The Associated Press.
I'm Judy Woodruff on the next News Hour. With conservatives making gains around the world, we take a closer look at the far-right movement in France. That's Monday on the PBS News Hour.
Virtual reality gaming may be a hot trend for the holiday season, but it's serious business from one computer scientist who's using VR to help people with multiple sclerosis with a game called Shark Punch.
A lot of what I do, what I largely focus on at UTSA is research in virtual reality for rehabilitation. So, it kind of did lead into this in some sense, because we'd already been trying to figure out, well, how can we make better rehabilitation, better physical rehabilitation games for people with various kinds of disabilities. And we've largely focused on people with multiple sclerosis, largely because that's what I have, so I'm aware of it, and I'm aware of the problems that people have. If you get hot, something really common for people with MS is that those all get way, way worse. So exercising the pool is a good way of getting around that. So then you can exercise to the level of intensity that you want without overheating. But there weren't any virtual reality games for in the pool. There weren't any underwater virtual reality games, because basically virtual reality systems don't work in the water. I thought, well, yeah, I could just take a couple of cell phones that were waterproof and make it work in the water and punch some sharks, because that makes sense. It made sense because you're going to get a bunch of sensory feedback from the water anyway, and punching sharks is fun, I guess. I don't have any personal experience with actually punching sharks, but it's a thing that they tell you to do if a shark attacks you, I guess. The other nice thing about virtual reality is that you can do things in virtual reality that you would never do in real life because they're way too dangerous. So you can kind of see the benefits. It's going to make it more exciting. It's going to make it more fun if there's a little bit of, your brain knows it's not really dangerous, but you're still going to respond when that shark comes around and comes up and you don't quite see it. And you're like, that happens. You see people do it all the time. It's really funny. You'll see me do it. So the way the game works is you have a head-mounted display on, and you have there's a cell phone that sits in your head-mounted display, which is it's really just a cell phone that is mounted to the front of your dive mask. You wear a little cell phone around your chest, and when the shark bites you, then you'll get a little buzz. And I wish phones were, honestly, kind of wish that like I could shock myself or something, because it would be a little bit more like, you know, I mean, it wouldn't hurt me, but it would be more realistic. The shark kind of circles you, and you kind of have to wait, and then usually you want to kind of track him, because he'll come and bite you from behind, and you won't necessarily know it if you don't keep your eye on it. So eventually he'll come down and he'll speed up and try and come and attack you, and you have to throw a punch, and you can't just throw like a little punch. It has to be a serious punch. Otherwise, the system will not recognize that you punch. But if he does bite you, you'll hear a little and your character in the game will be like, right? It's all sort of filtered to sound like it's underwater. I'm hoping that, you know, more people get interested in it and, you know, can actually take this thing to where it will actually be being used in real physical therapy clinics that have underwater rehabilitation or aquatic rehabilitation capabilities. I guess I don't have that stress that, what am I doing with my life? Because I'm doing something that actually helps people.
You can see more stories like that one on SciTech Now, Sundays at 5:30 p.m. here on KPBS. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thank you for joining us, and have a great evening.